I buried my mother on a Tuesday, and by Wednesday morning, my stepfather was already erasing her. I thought I had returned to Briar Glen to grieve. But Glenn met me at the door with a look that felt practiced and told me to start packing. He did not offer comfort. Instead, he handed me an eviction notice and gave me exactly 14 days to get out of the house he claimed he had already sold. The rain at the cemetery had been a fine, cold mist, the kind that did not wash anything clean but simply made everything heavy. The dampness clung to the wool of my coat and the hem of my black dress. Weighing me down as I stood over the hole in the earth that was waiting for my mother, I was 33 years old, standing in the mud of Briar Glen, Pennsylvania, feeling entirely like a child who had been lost in a supermarket. The grief was not a sharp pain yet. It was a fog. It was a thick, gray cotton wrapped around my brain, making the voices of the mourners sound distant and tinny. My stepfather, Glenn Marrow, stood next to me. He held an umbrella over his own head, angling it slightly so that the runoff dripped onto my shoulder. Though I do not think he did it on purpose, he was staring at the casket with a look I could not place. It was not sorrow. It was not relief. It was the look of a man waiting for a traffic light to change. He checked his watch twice during the service. The ride back to the house was silent. Glenn drove my mother's sedan, a car she had kept pristine for 7 years. He adjusted the mirrors, changed the radio station to a talk show, and drove 5 miles over the speed limit. I sat in the passenger seat, staring at the familiar streets of the town I had left a decade ago. Every corner held a memory of her: the bakery where she bought cinnamon rolls on Sundays, the library where she volunteered. The world felt emptier, less vibrant, as if the color had been drained out of the landscape along with her life. When we pulled into the driveway of the house, a 2-story colonial with white siding and black shutters that my mother had spent 20 years perfecting, I felt a sudden, crushing wave of exhaustion. I just wanted to go upstairs to my old room, curl up under the quilt she had made me, and sleep until the world made sense again. Glenn turned off the engine. The silence in the garage was absolute. "We should get inside," he said. His voice was steady. It lacked the tremor that mine had. I nodded and reached for the door handle. I gathered my purse and the folded program from the funeral service, which I had been gripping so tightly it was damp with sweat. Inside, the house smelled of lilies and old paper. The dining room table was covered in casserole dishes covered in aluminum foil, brought by neighbors who did not know what else to do. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking. Glenn walked in behind me. He did not take off his coat. He stood by the island, his fingers drumming a rhythm on the granite countertop. "Sarah," he said. I turned to look at him. He was a tall man, broad in the shoulders, with a face that had always been handsome in a generic, catalog sort of way. He had been married to my mother for 6 years. I had never loved him, but I had tolerated him because he seemed to make her happy, or at least, he kept her from being lonely. "I know this is a hard day," he said. "It is." I said. I took a sip of water. The cold liquid hurt my throat. He cleared his throat. He looked at a spot on the wall just above my left ear. "We need to talk about logistics," he said. I frowned. Logistics. My mother was not even in the ground 3 hours, and he wanted to talk about logistics. "Can we do this tomorrow?" I asked. "I am really tired." "Glenn, no," he said. The word came out sharp, cutting through the heavy air of the kitchen. "We need to do it now." He reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a folded envelope. He placed it on the counter between us. "Things are going to change," he said. "I have been looking at the finances, the medical bills, the estate. It is a mess. Sarah, your mother did not leave things in good order. My mother was the most organized person I knew. She labeled her spice jars with a label maker. She kept her tax returns in color-coded binders going back to 1998. The idea that she had left a mess was impossible. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "I have to sell the house," he said. I stared at him. The glass of water slipped slightly in my hand, and I tightened my grip. "Sell the house?" I repeated. "Glenn, we just buried her. You cannot be thinking about selling the house today. It is already done, he said. The world tilted. I felt a rush of blood to my head, a dizzying sensation of unreality. What do you mean? It is already done? I asked. I have a buyer, he said. He said it casually, as if he were telling me he had picked up milk. I accepted an offer yesterday. Yesterday? I whispered. My mother died 4 days ago. You accepted an offer on her house the day before her funeral? It is my house. Sarah, he said. His voice dropped an octave. Becoming harder, and I have to do what is best for the debts. He tapped the envelope on the counter. You need to start packing, he said. I looked at the envelope, then back at his face. His expression was flat. There was no grief, only calculation. You are kicking me out? I asked. I am telling you the reality of the situation, he said. The new owners want possession quickly. It was part of the deal. Cash offer. Fast close. You cannot stay here. I felt a laugh bubble up in my chest. A hysterical, jagged thing. I live in New York. Glenn, I said, I am just here for the funeral. I was going to stay a week to help you sort through her things. You do not need to sort through anything, he said. I will handle it. You are going to throw away her life? I asked. Her books? Her clothes? I will handle it. He repeated. He pushed the envelope toward me. This is just a formality, he said. But since you are technically a guest, I have to give you notice. I did not touch the envelope. I backed away from him. You are sick. I said, I am practical. He replied. Your mother wanted this handled quickly. Don't make it uglier. The way he said her name, or rather, the way he avoided saying it, replacing it with the functional title of your mother, made me feel cold. It was as if he was editing her out of the room, editing her out of her own life, reducing her to a problem that needed to be solved. I turned and walked out of the kitchen. I climbed the stairs to my old bedroom, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I shut the door and locked it. I sat on the edge of the twin bed I had slept in for 18 years and stared at the wall. He was lying. He had to be lying. The next morning, the doorbell rang at 9 o'clock. I had not slept. I had lain awake listening to the sounds of the house, the settling of the timber, the wind against the siding. I had listened for Glenn's footsteps, but the house had been silent. I went downstairs. Glenn was gone. His car was not in the driveway. I opened the front door. A courier stood there, a young man with a bored expression and a clipboard. Sarah Ward? He asked. Yes. I said, sign here. He said, I signed. He handed me a thick, stiff envelope and turned away before I could even ask who sent it. I closed the door and tore open the tab. Inside was a stack of legal documents. Notice to quit? Eviction. The words jumped out at me, bold and aggressive. I scanned the pages. The petitioner was Glenn Marrow, listed as the personal representative of the estate. The date for me to vacate the premises was exactly 14 days from today. 2 weeks. He was giving me 2 weeks to pack up 33 years of my mother's existence and leave. I walked into the living room and sat down on the sofa. The paper shook in my hands. This was not a grief-stricken impulse. This was a plan. You do not get a courier and formal legal paperwork overnight unless you have been preparing. I looked at the document again. Personal representative. That meant he had control. That meant there was no will. Or he had been named executor. I stood up and walked to the study. It was a small room off the hallway where my mother had kept her desk. This was her command center. This was where she paid the bills, wrote her letters, and organized her life. The room felt cold. The blinds were drawn. I walked to the metal filing cabinet in the corner. It was a 4-drawer beige behemoth that she had bought at an office supply store in the 90s. I pulled open the top drawer. Empty. My stomach dropped. I pulled open the second drawer. Empty. I pulled open the third. Inside. There were a few hanging folders, loose and floppy. I thumbed through them. Utility bills from 2 years ago. An instruction manual for a washing machine we no longer owned. A warranty for a vacuum cleaner that had broken in 2010. The easy stuff. The trash. Where were the tax returns? Where were the deed documents? Where were the life insurance policies? Where was the will? I checked the bottom drawer. It was completely bare. He had purged it. I stood there, staring at the metal bottom of the drawer, feeling a rising panic. My mother did not throw things away. She believed in paper trails. She believed in keeping records just in case. If the files were gone, it was because someone had removed them. I heard the front door open. Glenn. I walked out of the study and met him in the hallway. He was wearing his suit again, looking fresh and rested, as if he had not just served his stepdaughter with an eviction notice the morning after his wife's funeral. "Where are the files?" I asked. He hung his coat on the rack. He did not look at me. "I told you," he said. "I am handling the estate. I moved the important documents to a secure location." "What secure location?" I asked. "My office." He said, "You do not have an office." I said, "You retired 3 years ago." "I have a safe deposit box," he said, "and a lawyer." "Who is the lawyer?" I asked. "That does not concern you." He said, "It concerns me if you are selling my mother's house out from under me." I snapped. He turned to me then. His face was a mask of calm. "It is not your mother's house anymore." "Sarah," he said, "it is the estate's house. And as the surviving spouse, I am the sole beneficiary. That is how the law works in Pennsylvania when there is no will. My mother had a will." I said, "I know she did. She told me." "There is no will," Glenn said. "We looked. We turned this house upside down. There is nothing." He walked past me toward the kitchen. "You have 14 days. Sarah," he said over his shoulder, "do not make me call the sheriff." I went back upstairs. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely type my password into my laptop. I sat at my small desk and opened the browser. I needed to see it. I needed to see proof. I navigated to the County Register of Deeds website. It was a clunky government-run site that looked like it had not been updated since the early 2000s. I typed in Marrow and hit search. A list of documents populated the screen. There was the deed from when my mother and my father bought the house in 1990. There was a mortgage release from 5 years ago. And then, at the very top of the list, there was a new filing. Quitclaim deed. The recording date was 3 days ago, the day after my mother died. I clicked on the PDF icon. The document downloaded, and I opened it. It was a single page. It purported to transfer the property from Elena Ward Marrow to Glenn Marrow. I zoomed in. The text looked strange. The font for my mother's name was slightly different from the font for the legal description of the property, as if 2 different documents had been cut and pasted together, and Glenn's name was listed as grantee, but it was misspelled Glen Marrow in one spot before being corrected in another. It looked sloppy. It looked like a template that had been copied and slightly misentered. I stared at the signature at the bottom. Elena Ward Marrow. The signature was a shaky scrawl. My mother had suffered a stroke at the end. Yes, but even when her hand was weak, her signature had a specific slant to the right. This signature looked cramped. It looked vertical, and the date next to the signature, it was dated 2 weeks before she died. If she signed this 2 weeks ago, why was it only recorded the day after she died? And why would she sign a quitclaim deed giving him the house for $1 when she had always told me this house was my inheritance? I grabbed my phone. I needed to know what was happening. I pulled the for sale flyer out of my bag. I had snatched it off the kitchen counter when Glenn wasn't looking. It was a cheap, printed sheet. "Coming soon," it said in bold letters. I dialed the number for the real estate office listed at the bottom. "Briar Glen Realty. This is Cindy," a cheerful voice answered. "Hi," I said. "I am calling about the property on Elm Street, the Marrow residence." "Oh, yes," Cindy said. Her voice brightened. "That is a lovely property. Are you looking to make an offer?" "I am the daughter of the owner," I said. There was a pause. The tone on the other end shifted instantly. "Oh, I am so sorry for your loss. Ms. Marrow. It is Ward." I said, "Sarah Ward. I was just confused." "My stepfather said the house is already sold?" "Yes, that is correct." Cindy said. She sounded guarded now. "It is under contract. We have a cash buyer. Already? I asked. It is not even listed on the MLS. It was a pocket listing, she said. The buyer was very motivated. When is the closing? I asked. I really should not be discussing this with anyone but Mr. Marrow, she said. Please, I said. I need to know how much time I have to get my things out. There was a sigh on the other line, the sound of typing. The closing is scheduled for next Friday, she said. Next Friday? That was 9 days away. That is impossible. I said, probate takes months. You cannot close on a house 9 days after the owner dies. Mr. Marrow provided the necessary affidavits. She said, the title company has cleared it. Look, Ms. Ward, I have to go. She hung up. I sat there, holding the phone. 9 days. They were trying to rush this through before the dirt on my mother's grave had even settled. I needed air. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sky was a bruised purple. It was getting dark early. I saw movement in the yard next door. Mara Klein was standing by the fence. She was wearing a thick down coat and a knit hat pulled low over her ears. She was looking at my house. I had known Mara since I was 5. She was the neighborhood gossip. Yes, but she had also been my mother's friend. She had brought over a lasagna yesterday. I ran downstairs and out the back door. The cold air hit my face like a slap. Mara! I called out. She jumped. She looked like she wanted to run back inside her house. But I was already at the fence. Sarah, she said. Her breath puffed out in a white cloud. I didn't mean to stare. It is okay. I said, I saw the sign. She said. She gestured vaguely toward the front yard where a signpost had been hammered into the frozen ground. I didn't know Glenn was selling so fast. Me neither, I said. Mara looked around, checking the windows of my house as if she expected Glenn to be watching. She leaned in closer to the fence. I saw him, she whispered. Saw who? I asked. Glenn, she said. The night after the funeral. Well, no, the night of the funeral. Late. Like 2 a.m. What was he doing? He had a truck, she said. Not a moving truck, just a white van. He was loading boxes from the garage. Boxes? I asked. And a case, she said. A metal file case. The heavy kind. My heart slammed against my ribs. You saw him take a file case? Yes, she said. It looked heavy. He was struggling with it. He put it in the van and drove off. He came back about an hour later without it. I gripped the cold chain link of the fence. Thank you. Mara, I said. She reached out and patted my gloved hand. Be careful. Sarah, she said. He doesn't look right. His eyes. He looks like a man running away from something. I went back inside. I felt sick. He had stolen the files. He had physically removed the evidence of my mother's estate before I even arrived. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Jenna Pike. Jenna was my best friend from college. She was a paralegal in New Jersey, sharp-tongued and fiercely loyal. I answered, Tell me you are leaving, she said without a preamble. I can't. I said, Sarah, come on, she said. You can't stay in that house with him. It is toxic. He served you with eviction papers? That is psycho behavior. Just come stay with me. We will figure it out from here. You need to grieve safely. He stole the files. Jenna. I said, What? Mara saw him. He loaded a metal file case into a van at 2 a.m, and the deed on the website looks fake, and the closing is in 9 days. Jenna was silent for a moment. 9 days? She asked. Yes, that is a hustle, she said. That is not a sale. That is a liquidation. I am not leaving. I said, Sarah, if I leave, I never get back in. I said, I know it. Jenna. If I walk out that door, he changes the locks, the closing happens, and the house is gone, and whatever my mother left for me is gone with it. You are scared, she said. I am terrified. I admitted, but you are also angry, she said. Yes, I said, I am furious. Then lock your door, she said, and do not sign anything. I am going to look up some things on my end. But Sarah? Yeah? Watch your back. If he is desperate enough to forge a deed, he is desperate enough to do other things. I hung up. I sat alone in my childhood bedroom. The room had not changed much since high school. The same posters were on the walls, faint squares where the sun had not faded the paint, the same trophies on the shelf. I looked at the door. It was a flimsy hollow core door with a simple push-button lock. It would not stop a determined man. I dragged my dresser in front of it. The wood scraped loudly against the floor, a harsh sound in the quiet house. I sat on the floor with my back against the dresser. Glenn wanted me to leave. He was banking on my grief. He was counting on me being too weak, too sad, too overwhelmed to fight back. He thought I would crumble under the weight of the loss and just fade away. He was using my mother's death as a smokescreen to rob her. I thought about the way he had said, "Don't make it uglier." I looked at the eviction notice lying on the floor next to me. I pulled my knees to my chest. I was not going to pack. I was not going to leave. I was going to stay right here. And I was going to find out what was in that metal box. Even if I had to tear this house apart to find the trail he missed. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like a crime scene, and I was the only witness who refused to leave. I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I listened to the wind, and I waited for the morning. I had 13 days left on the paper, but I knew, deep down, I had a lot less time than that. The clock was ticking, and Glenn was already laps ahead of me, but he had made one mistake. He thought I was just a grieving daughter. He didn't know that grief could burn hot enough to fuel a war. I opened my eyes and stared into the dark. Let's see who breaks first. Glenn. The morning sun did not break through the clouds. It merely turned the gray sky a lighter shade of slate. I drove my rental car into the center of town, the tires humming against the cold asphalt. Briar Glen was the kind of town where the county seat felt like a fortress of red brick and bureaucracy, a place where lives were recorded in dusty ledgers and typed into databases that determined who owned what and who owed whom. I parked 3 blocks away to avoid paying the meter, a reflex from my college days that I had never quite shaken, even though I now had a credit card with a limit that could handle a few quarters. Walking toward the Register of Deeds office, I pulled my coat tighter. The wind bit at my exposed neck. I felt exposed in every sense, financially, emotionally, legally. I was walking into a fight I did not know how to win with weapons I did not yet have. The office smelled of floor wax and old paper. It was a smell that reminded me of elementary school libraries, but without the comfort. There were rows of computer terminals and, behind them, wall-to-wall bookshelves filled with heavy leather-bound volumes that contained the history of every acre of land in the county. I approached the counter. The clerk was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain and a cardigan that looked hand-knitted. Her name tag read, Betsy. "Can I help you?" "Hun?" she asked. She did not look up from the stack of papers she was stamping. "I need to see a document that was recorded this week." I said, "For the Marrow property on Elm Street." She stopped stamping and looked at me over the rims of her glasses. "You can use the terminals over there," she said, pointing a manicured finger toward the computers. "Or I can pull it up if you have the instrument number." I gave her the address instead. She typed it in with 2 fingers, hunting and pecking at the keys. The sound was rhythmic, slow, agonizing. "Here it is," she said. "Recorded 3 days ago. A corrective deed." "Corrective deed?" I asked. The term sounded innocent, helpful, even like correcting a spelling error on a homework assignment. She nodded and turned the monitor so I could see. "It happens all the time," she said, her voice dropping to a confidential tone, as if she were sharing a recipe. "Sometimes the original deed has a typo in the legal description, or a name is misspelled. A corrective deed fixes the error so the chain of title stays clean." I leaned in. The document on the screen was the one I had seen on my laptop. But here, in the high-resolution starkness of the county monitor, it looked even more jarring. "It says it is correcting the deed from 1990. I said, "That was when my parents bought the house." "Right," Betsy said. See here? She pointed to a paragraph of dense legal jargon. It says the original deed intended to convey the property to Elena Ward and Glenn Marrow as joint tenants with rights of survivorship, but the original filing omitted the survivorship language. This corrects that intent. I felt the blood drain from my face. Joint tenants with rights of survivorship. That was the magic phrase. If they owned it that way. When my mother died, the house automatically went to Glenn. No probate, no will, no hesitation. It became his, instantly. But my father was on the deed in 1990. I said, Glenn didn't even meet my mother until 2014. Betsy frowned and clicked back a page. Oh, I see, she said. There was a quitclaim involved first. Your mother quitclaimed the interest to herself and Glenn, and then this corrective deed fixed the language on that quitclaim. It was a maze, a shell game played with paper. Can I see the signature page? I asked. She clicked a button, and the image scrolled down. There it was. Elena Ward Marrow. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. The signature was blue ink on white paper, scanned into black and white pixels. The S in Sarah, she sometimes wrote my name in her margins when she was thinking, always had a deep curve at the bottom. The E in Elena usually looped high. This signature was flat. It slanted backward, just a fraction of a degree. My mother was right-handed and wrote with a forward slant. That does not look like her signature, I said. My voice was quiet, barely a whisper. Betsy shrugged, a gesture of bureaucratic indifference. Notaries verify the signatures. Hun, she said, we just record them. As long as the notary stamp is valid and the formatting is correct, we file it. We are not handwriting experts. I looked at the notary stamp. Sable and Wren Notary Services. It was a mobile notary. Someone who came to you. Can I get a certified copy? I asked. That will be $2 a page. She said, I paid $6 for 3 pages of lies. As I walked out of the building, the certified copy felt heavy in my purse, like a stone I was carrying to throw at a glass house. My next stop was Keystone Title and Settlement. The address on the flyer led me to a strip mall on the edge of town, sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a discount mattress store. The storefront was glass, with a generic logo decal peeling slightly at the corner. I pushed open the door. A bell chimed, a cheerful sound that clashed with the knot of dread in my stomach. The reception area was small and aggressively beige. There were 2 chairs, a potted plant that looked plastic, and a high counter. Behind the counter sat a young woman with a headset, typing furiously. Can I help you? She asked, not breaking her typing rhythm. I am here about the closing for the Marrow estate. I said, I wanted to sound authoritative, but I think I just sounded desperate. She paused and looked up. Her eyes were guarded. Address? 412 Elm Street. She typed it in. That file is confidential. She said, Are you a party to the transaction? I am the daughter of the deceased owner. I said. She shook her head. I am sorry. We can only speak with the seller or the buyer. The seller is my stepfather. I said, and I believe the sale is fraudulent. The word fraudulent hung in the air. The typing stopped completely. Ma'am, she said, her voice turning icy. If you have a legal dispute, you need to contact the seller directly. We just handle the paperwork. I need to know who the settlement agent is. I said, I need to speak to someone who can stop this. I cannot give out employee information. She said, please leave, or I will have to call security. Security was likely just the mattress salesman next door. But I didn't push it. I had been in the room for less than 2 minutes, and I had hit a wall. I turned to go. As I did, my eyes swept across the counter. There was a wire mesh tray labeled Outbound Courier. On top of the stack was a manila envelope. The label was facing me. Attention. Parker Reddick, Re, Maple Row, /Marrow. I memorized the name instantly. Parker Reddick. I walked out of the office, my heart pounding. I didn't have answers, but I had a name, and in a town this size, a name was a loose thread. I got back in my car and drove to a diner on the highway, the kind of place with laminated menus and coffee that tasted like burnt hazelnuts. I needed neutral ground. I couldn't go back to the house yet. I couldn't look at Glenn and pretend I wasn't plotting his destruction. I ordered a coffee and dialed Jenna. She picked up on the first ring. "Tell me you are at the airport," she said. "I am at a diner." I said, "I went to the deeds office, and?" "It is bad. Jenna, they filed a corrective deed to bypass probate. It makes Glenn the sole owner with rights of survivorship, and the signature looks wrong. It looks forced." "You think he forged it?" Jenna asked. "I think he traced it." I said, "Or maybe he guided her hand when she was medicated. I don't know, but the notary is some mobile service I have never heard of." "Okay," Jenna said. "I hear the clicking of a keyboard in the background. I have been digging into the timeline you gave me. Sarah, are you sitting down?" "I am in a booth." I said, "Okay." I ran a search on address changes linked to Glenn's name. You know how credit bureaus track that stuff? "Yeah. Glenn put in a request to forward all mail from your mom's house to a post office box in the next town over." "Okay," I said. "People do that when someone dies, to manage the bills." "Sarah, look at the date," Jenna said. "What date?" He opened the post office box and filed the forwarding request on the 14th of November. "The 14th?" I whispered. "That was the week your mom went into the hospital." Jenna said, "She wasn't even dead yet. She was just admitted for the pneumonia." He started diverting her mail the moment she left the house. The diner noise, the clatter of plates, the sizzle of the grill, faded away. He knew. I said, he knew she wasn't coming back, or he was making sure she didn't come back to a house she controlled. Jenna said, if he was intercepting the mail, he was hiding something. Bank statements, insurance notices, maybe even letters from a lawyer. My hands were shaking again. I put the coffee cup down before I spilled it. He was erasing her while she was still breathing. I said, you need to find out what he was hiding. Jenna said, if he diverted the mail, there is a reason. Is there anywhere in the house he hasn't raided yet? He emptied the filing cabinet. I said, he took the metal box. Think, Sarah, your mom. She was secretive in that way of hers, the way she hid Christmas presents, the way she tucked money in books. Where would she put something she didn't want him to see? I closed my eyes, trying to summon the ghost of my mother. I thought about her hands, her busy, constant hands. She was always sewing, always fixing things, the sewing desk. I said, what? She has an old Singer sewing machine desk in the guest room, the kind with the fold-out top. She used to tape things underneath the drawers, spare keys, emergency cash. She called it her squirrel spots. Go there, Jenna said. Do not let him see you. I paid for my coffee and left a $5 tip for a waitress I hadn't even looked at when I got back to the house. Glenn's car was in the driveway. I felt a spike of adrenaline. I had to be quiet. I entered through the garage, using the code I prayed he hadn't changed yet. It worked. The door slid up with a groan that sounded like a scream in the quiet afternoon. I waited, holding my breath. Nothing. He must be in his office, the guest room he had claimed downstairs, or maybe he was out back. I slipped inside and took off my shoes. I crept up the stairs, avoiding the third step that always creaked. The sewing desk was in the hallway upstairs, pushed against the wall beneath a window that overlooked the backyard. It was a beautiful piece of furniture, walnut, with intricate ironwork on the legs. It was piled high with unmatched socks and old magazines. Glenn's doing. My mother would never have treated it like a junk shelf. I cleared off the debris, my heart hammering in my ears. I pulled out the top drawer. It was full of thread spools and bobbins. I knelt on the floor and felt underneath the drawer casing. The wood was rough, unfinished. My fingers brushed against something smooth. Tape. I peeled it back gently. It was a single strip of blue painter's tape, holding a small, silver key. I held it up to the light. It wasn't a house key. It was too small. It looked like a key for a luggage lock, or maybe a safety deposit box, but not a bank box. Those were usually long and flat. This was short, with teeth on only one side. I didn't know what it opened, but I knew one thing. Glenn didn't know it existed. I put the key in my bra, the cold metal against my skin a reminder that I was now carrying a secret. I went into my room and locked the door again. I needed legal advice, real advice, not just Jenna's paralegal instincts. I searched for probate attorney Briar Glenn on my phone. The first result was a large firm with a flashy website. I skipped it. I wanted someone who looked like they fought in the trenches. I found a listing for Lydia Morse, estate probate law. Her website was simple, just text and a phone number. I called. She answered her own phone. Lydia Morse. Hi. I said, my name is Sarah Ward. I need to speak to someone about contesting a deed and a potential fraudulent estate transfer. I have an opening at 4 o'clock, she said. Her voice was dry, like old parchment. Bring everything you have. Her office was in a converted Victorian house on the edge of the business district. The waiting room was a hallway with 2 chairs. Lydia Morse came out to greet me. She was a small woman with steel gray hair cut into a sharp bob and eyes that missed nothing. Come in, she said. I sat in a leather chair across from her desk. I laid it all out. The eviction, the corrective deed, the missing files, the mail forwarding, the key I had just found. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she sat back and steepled her fingers. This is a mess, she said. I know, I said. But it is a specific kind of mess. She continued. If the deed is valid, he owns the house. If the deed is forged or obtained by undue influence, the house belongs to your mother's estate. Since she died without a will, or so he claims, the estate follows the laws of intestacy, and since he is her husband, he gets everything. I said, not everything, Lydia said. In Pennsylvania, if there is a surviving spouse and children who are not the issue of the surviving spouse, that is you, the spouse gets the first $30,000 plus 1/2 of the remaining estate. You would get the other half. I sat up straighter. So he can't just take it all? No, she said. Even without a will, he doesn't take 100%. But that is only if the house is part of the estate. The deed he recorded removes the house from the estate entirely. It passes directly to him. That is why he filed it. He is trying to bypass the 50% split. It is about the money, I said. It is always about the money. Sarah, she said, but the timing is your enemy. Once that closing happens and the property is sold to a third party, especially an LLC, unwinding the title becomes a nightmare. We would have to prove the buyer knew about the fraud. If they claim they are a bona fide purchaser for value, you might never get the house back. You would only get a judgment against Glenn, and by then, the money will be gone. So I have to stop the closing. I said, yes, she said. But to get an injunction, we need more than a suspicion about a signature. We need evidence. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing slightly. Let me ask you a question, she said, and I want you to think carefully. Okay, were they legally married? I blinked. Of course. I said, they had a wedding. I was there. It was in the backyard. Did you sign a license as a witness? She asked. No. I said, I think the maid of honor did. Did you ever see the certificate? No, I admitted. Did she change her name legally? On her driver's license? On her bank accounts? She hyphenated it socially. I said, but I don't know about the bank accounts. Check, Lydia said. If they were never legally married, if it was just a ceremony without the paperwork, which happens more often than you think with second marriages, then he is not her heir at all. He is a legal stranger. And that deed becomes even more suspicious. It felt like the floor had dropped out. Could it be that simple? Could Glenn be a fraud all the way down to the foundation? I left her office with a list of tasks. Check the marriage records, find the will, identify what the key opens. When I got home, the house was dark. Glenn was out again. I went to the study. I didn't dare turn on the big light. I used the flashlight on my phone. I needed to access her digital life. Glenn had taken the physical files, but he couldn't take the internet. I opened my laptop and went to Gmail. I knew my mother's email address. I didn't have her password, but I knew her security questions. Make of your first car? Ford. Name of your elementary school? Lincoln. Favorite vacation spot? Cape May. The screen flashed. Password reset link sent. I waited. I realized I couldn't reset it without access to her recovery email, which was mine. I logged into my own email. There it was. I reset her password to something Glenn would never guess. Liar 2026. I logged in. The inbox was full of junk mail, Bed Bath Beyond coupons, political newsletters. I went to the search bar. I typed Glenn, nothing useful. Just forwarded jokes. I typed attorney, nothing. I typed appointment. A list appeared. Hair appointments, dentist, and then one from 6 months ago. Confirmation. Appointment with Northline Fiduciary. I opened it. Dear Elena, this email confirms your consultation with Elliot Vance at Northline Fiduciary on July 10th regarding your estate plan. Please bring the documents we discussed. Estate plan. She had seen someone. She had gone to a fiduciary. That meant there was a paper trail. I forwarded the email to myself and to Jenna. Then I deleted it from the sent folder and the trash so Glenn wouldn't see I had been there. I heard the front door open. I slammed the laptop shut. I walked out of the study, trying to look casual. But my heart was beating so hard I felt it in my throat. Glenn was standing in the hallway. He was holding a bag of takeout food. The smell of grease filled the air. He looked at me. His eyes went to the laptop tucked under my arm. "What were you doing in there?" he asked. His voice was calm, but there was a tightness in his jaw. "Just looking for a book," I said. "In the dark?" he asked. I didn't want to waste electricity. I said, "Since I'm moving out and all." He took a step toward me. "You are snooping." "Sarah," he said, "I am grieving." "Glenn," I countered. He dropped the bag on the entry table. It landed with a heavy thud. "You think I don't know what you are doing?" he said. "You are calling realtors. You are visiting the county office. I have friends in this town." "Sarah, people talk. You are selling my mother's house in a week." I said, my voice rising. "Of course I'm asking questions. It is done," he shouted. The volume of his voice shocked me. Glenn was usually the master of passive aggression. This was pure aggression. His hands were shaking at his sides. "It is done," he repeated. Quieter but with more venom. "You are only hurting yourself. You are looking for a fight you cannot win." Then he blinked. It was like watching a computer reboot. The rage vanished, replaced by a smooth, concerned mask. "I am sorry," he said. "I am just stressed. This is hard on me too. You look tired. Sarah, you should get some rest." He picked up the takeout bag. "I got Chinese." He said, "Do you want an egg roll?" The whiplash made me dizzy. "No," I said, "I am not hungry." I went upstairs. I didn't lock the door this time. I wanted him to think I was cowed. I lay in bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. Hours passed. The house settled into silence. Around midnight, I heard a murmur. Glenn's bedroom was down the hall, but the heating vents in this old house carried sound like a tin can telephone. I crept to the vent in the corner of my room. I lay my cheek against the cold metal grate. I could hear him. He was on the phone. "I told you it's clean." He said, "Pause. No. She doesn't know anything. She is just flailing. She's a kid." Pause. "The deed is recorded. The title is clear. We close Friday. Just have the wire ready." Pause. "Yeah, I know. I promised. It will be done." I pulled away from the vent. "It's clean." He was talking about the theft of my life as if it were a laundered shirt. "We close Friday." I had 5 days. I reached into my shirt and touched the cold metal of the key against my skin. "You are wrong, Glenn. I thought, it is not clean. And I am not just a kid. I was the daughter of Elena Ward, and I was about to become his worst nightmare." The house felt different in the daylight, less like a tomb and more like a puzzle box waiting to be solved. I had the small silver key burning a hole in my pocket, but I had to wait until Glenn left for his morning errands, which I suspected were just meetings with the people helping him dismantle my life. I watched from the upstairs window as his car backed out of the driveway. He was wearing his suit again, looking every inch the grieving widower trying to settle affairs. As soon as the taillights disappeared around the corner, I moved. I didn't know exactly what the key opened, but my mother's squirrel spots followed a logic of their own. If the key was taped under the sewing desk in the guest room, the lock it belonged to wouldn't be far. She didn't like to carry things between floors if she could help it. I checked the guest room closet first. Nothing but old coats and boxes of holiday decorations. I checked the nightstand. Nothing. Then I remembered the hallway closet, the one just outside the guest room door. It was a narrow, deep space where we stored linens and the vacuum cleaner. I pulled the door open. The smell of cedar chips hit me, a scent my mother loved. I pulled out the towels, stacking them on the floor. I dragged the vacuum out. The back of the closet was lined with cedar paneling. It looked solid, but I remembered a game we used to play when I was a kid, hiding messages for each other. She had taught me to look for the seams. I ran my fingers along the wood at the back, near the floor. The third panel from the left felt loose. I pressed on the bottom edge, and it clicked. A magnetic latch. The panel swung outward on a hidden hinge. My breath hitched. Behind the wood, nestled in the insulation, was a small, gray metal box. It looked like a petty cash box, the kind you buy at a hardware store. I pulled it out. It was heavy. I sat cross-legged on the hallway floor, surrounded by towels, and took the key from my pocket. My hand shook as I slid it into the lock. It turned with a satisfying snick. I lifted the lid. There was no cash inside. There was no jewelry. There was just a single, white envelope, thick and sealed. On the front, in my mother's handwriting, firm, looped, unmistakable, was my name. Sarah, if you need this, I'm sorry. I stared at the words, feeling a sudden, stinging pressure behind my eyes. If you need this, she had known. She had known that her death might trigger a war, and she had prepared for it alone. I tore open the envelope. Inside was a document titled Summary of the Elena Ward Revocable Living Trust. I scanned the pages. The legalese was dense, but the bolded names jumped out at me. Grantor, Elena Ward. Trustee, Elena Ward. Successor, Trustee, Sarah Ward, not Glenn, me. And there was a note, clipped to the front with a paper clip. Sarah, I moved the house into this trust so no one can rush you out while you're grieving. The deed is already filed. The house belongs to the trust, and you are the trustee. Take your time. Breathe. I love you. I pressed the note to my chest and closed my eyes. For a moment, I wasn't fighting a legal battle. I was just being parented one last time. She was protecting me from beyond the grave. I looked back inside the envelope. There were 2 business cards. One was cream-colored and professional. Northline Fiduciary Services, Elliot Vance, Senior Advisor. The other was cheaper, glossy cardstock with a generic logo of a quill pen. Sable and Wren Notary Services. On the back of the notary card, my mother had written a date, October 12th, and 5 words that made my blood run cold. Do not let him bully you. I sat there for a long time, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place with the terrifying precision of a trap closing. The corrective deed I had seen at the county office was dated after she died, but it referenced a quitclaim she supposedly signed 2 weeks prior. But here, in my hands, was proof she had moved the house into a trust months ago. If the house was in the trust, she couldn't have signed a quitclaim deed as an individual. The title wouldn't have been in her name to give. Glenn, or someone helping him, was trying to override the trust. I put everything back in the box, locked it, and shoved it deep into my tote bag. I put the panel back, restacked the towels, and put the vacuum away. I needed Lydia Morse. Lydia's office was quiet, the afternoon light filtering through the dust motes dancing in the air. I laid the documents on her desk. The trust summary, the note, the business cards. Lydia put on her reading glasses and read in silence. The only sound was the ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. Finally, she looked up, Her expression had shifted from professional curiosity to something sharper. "This changes the landscape," she said. "It means the house is mine, right?" I asked. "Or, it belongs to the trust, and I control the trust." "In theory, yes," Lydia said. "If this trust was funded, meaning if the deed transferring the house into the trust was actually recorded before she died, then the house was not hers to give away personally. A quitclaim deed signed by Elena Ward as an individual would be worthless if the owner of record was Elena Ward, trustee." "So Glenn's deed is void," I said, feeling a surge of hope. "Ideally," Lydia said, "but the problem is the public record. If the deed into the trust wasn't recorded properly, or if Glenn's corrective deed managed to muddy the waters enough to look like it superseded the trust transfer, we have a title defect. He is trying to create a competing chain of title." She tapped the notary card. "Sable and Wren," she read. "I don't know them, and that is unusual. The legal community in this county is small. We all know the reliable notaries. My mom wrote, 'Do not let him bully you' on the back," I said. Lydia looked at the card again. "That suggests duress, or fear. Sarah, if your mother went to the trouble of creating a trust and hiring a fiduciary, she knew Glenn was a threat to your inheritance. Why didn't she tell me?" I asked, the question that had been haunting me. Why did she let me think everything was fine? "Because she was living with him," Lydia said gently. "Sometimes, the safest way to handle a volatile spouse is to make plans in secret and hope the safeguards hold. If she had told you, and you had confronted him, her life might have become unbearable." It made sense, but it hurt. It meant her last months were filled with a quiet, strategic terror. "What do I do?" I asked. "We need to confirm the trust's existence and its funding," Lydia said. "Call this man, Elliot Vance. If he drafted this, he will have the originals, and if he recorded the deed into the trust, he can prove Glenn's paperwork is invalid." She leaned forward. "But Sarah, be careful. If Glenn finds out you have this, he will become dangerous. A man who steals a house is desperate. A man who gets caught stealing a house is cornered." I called Northline Fiduciary from my car. My hand was sweating against the phone. "Northline Fiduciary, this is Elliot Vance." "Mr. Vance?" I said. "My name is Sarah Ward. I am Elena Ward's daughter." There was a pause on the line, a heavy, significant silence. "Ms. Ward," he said. His voice was deep, measured. "I have been wondering if I would hear from you. I saw the obituary." "I found the envelope," I said. "The one in the lockbox." "Good," he said. "That simplifies things." "My stepfather is trying to sell the house," I said. "He says it's his. He has a deed." "That is incorrect," Elliot said. He chose the word carefully, as if avoiding a harsher one. "Your mother was very clear about her intentions." "Can I see you?" I asked. "I need to know what happened." "I have an opening in an hour," he said. "Come to the office. Bring identification. I need to verify you are the successor trustee before I can release the full file." Northline Fiduciary was located in a sleek office park on the other side of town. The kind of place with glass walls and abstract art in the lobby. It felt worlds away from Glenn's frantic packing and the dusty courthouse. Elliot Vance was a man in his 50s, wearing a charcoal suit and a tie that looked expensive. He shook my hand firmly and led me to a conference room. He placed a thick folder on the table. "I am sorry for your loss," he said. "Your mother was a very intelligent, very precise woman." "She was," I said. "But she was scared." "She was realistic," Elliot corrected. He opened the folder. "We executed the trust documents on July 10th. On that same day, we signed a deed transferring the property from Elena Ward to the Elena Ward Living Trust. We recorded it electronically the next morning." "So the house is in the trust," I said. "It is," he said, "and as of the moment of her death. You became the sole trustee. Glenn Marrow has no authority over that asset." "He filed a corrective deed," I said. 3 days ago. Claiming the original 1990 deed had a mistake. Elliot frowned. He pulled a notepad toward him. A corrective deed to a deed from 30 years ago? That is aggressive, and legally dubious if the property has already been transferred to a trust. He looked at me. Your mother anticipated this. How? She requested a specific clause, Elliot said. A no-spouse override. It is not standard language, but we included it in the trust declaration. It explicitly states that any transfer of the property out of the trust requires the signature of the trustee and a certificate of trust. It specifically voids any attempt to claim the property as marital property under the guise of forgotten paperwork. She knew he would try to claim it was a mistake, I realized. She knew there was unresolved marital documentation, Elliot said. She didn't elaborate, but she paid extra for us to record the deed with a timestamp and to send a duplicate certified copy to a secure off-site storage. She wanted redundancy. I felt a lump in my throat. She paid extra to make sure I got the house. She paid extra to make sure you were safe, Elliot said. She told me, my husband is a man who believes what he wants to believe. I need the law to be louder than him. He's closing on Friday, I said. He has a buyer. Elliot closed the folder. Then we need to be louder than him. I can provide you with a certification of trust and an affidavit of the deed recording. You take that to the title company handling his sale. If they are legitimate, they will stop the closing immediately. And if they aren't legitimate, then we have a lawsuit, Elliot said. But let's hope the title company values their license more than his commission. I drove home feeling armed. I had the truth in a folder on the passenger seat, but I also had a sinking feeling in my gut. The other business card, Sable and Wren. I pulled into a coffee shop parking lot to check my phone. I didn't want to use the Wi-Fi at home. I was paranoid Glenn was monitoring the router. I searched for Sable and Wren notary services. The website was a template, barely filled out. Mobile notary, 24/7 service. We come to you. I searched for reviews. There were no Google reviews, which was a red flag for a business that relied on trust. But I found a thread on a local legal forum. Has anyone used Sable Wren? Avoid, one comment read. Guy showed up 2 hours late, didn't bring his logbook. Sketchy, read another. Asked me to sign a document that was already dated for the previous day. I refused. Missing logs, a third comment said. My lawyer tried to subpoena their journal for a custody case and they claimed it was lost in a flood. My stomach dropped. A notary without a logbook was a ghost. If they notarized the corrective deed, or the fake quitclaim Glenn was using, and there was no log to prove my mother was actually there, or that she wasn't, it became a he said, she said. Glenn hadn't just found a notary, he had found a professional eraser. I started the car. I needed to get back. I needed to act normal until I could drop the hammer. When I walked into the house, the atmosphere was different. The tension was still there, but it had shifted. It wasn't the cold silence of the last few days. It was something stickier. Glenn was in the living room. He was sitting on the sofa, a glass of scotch in his hand. He looked up when I entered. Sarah, he said. He sounded tired. Come sit down. I hesitated, then sat in the armchair opposite him. I kept my bag, with the trust documents, on my lap. I have been thinking, he said. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. We shouldn't be fighting. Your mother wouldn't want us fighting. I'm not fighting. Glenn, I said. I'm just trying to understand. I know, he said. And I know I have been abrupt. The stress. You know how it is. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope, a plain white business envelope. He placed it on the coffee table and slid it toward me. What is this? I asked. A settlement, he said. I looked at him. A settlement? I know the eviction is harsh, he said. I don't want to throw you out on the street. I want to help you start over, in New York, or wherever you want to go. I didn't touch the envelope. How much? $20,000, he said. Cashier's check. It's inside, and you can take whatever furniture you want. The heirlooms, the jewelry. I don't need any of that. $20,000. It was a lot of money to offer someone you were legally evicting. It was guilt money, or hush money. What do I have to do? I asked. Just sign a release, he said, saying you have no further claims against the estate, and vacate by Sunday. That gives you 48 hours. Why the rush? I asked. If the closing is Friday, why do I need to sign a release? Just to wrap things up, he said, to make it clean, for both of us. It was too fast, too clean, too transactional. He was trying to buy me off before I found out what I had already found out. He must have sensed something. Maybe he saw me leave with the tote bag. Maybe he just knew that time was running out. I can't sign that, I said. His expression hardened instantly. The mask slipped. Why not? Because the house isn't yours to sell, I said. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bone. Excuse me? He said. His voice was very quiet. I know about the trust, Glenn, I said. I didn't mean to say it. I meant to wait. But the offer, the insult of it, pushed it out of me. I know she moved the house into a trust in July. I know I am the trustee. He stared at me. His face went pale, then red. He stood up slowly. You don't know what you're talking about, he said. I have the documents. I lied. Well, half lied. I had copies. I spoke to Northline Fiduciary. You went behind my back, he spat. You stole the files, I shouted, standing up too. You stole the lockbox. You diverted her mail. You are trying to steal this house. And you are offering me 20 grand to look the other way? It is my house, he roared. He threw the glass of scotch against the fireplace. It shattered, the sound explosive in the small room. I paid for the repairs. I took care of her. I lived here. But she didn't leave it to you, I said, my voice shaking but steady. She left it to me, to keep me safe from you. He laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. You think you're special because you found some papers? He sneered. You think a piece of paper matters when the deal is already done? The money is already wired. Sarah, the train has left the station. Then I will derail it, I said. He looked at me with pure hatred. You are just like her, stubborn, ungrateful. He turned and stormed out of the room. I heard the back door slam. I stood there, trembling. I looked at the shattered glass on the hearth. He was scared. He had said, the money is already wired, but the closing wasn't until Friday. That was a lie. Or maybe the buyer, this LLC, was advancing him funds illegally. 10 minutes later, the back door opened again. Glenn walked back into the living room. He had taken off his jacket. He looked calm, disturbingly calm. I'm sorry, he said. I lost my temper. That was uncalled for. He began picking up the pieces of glass. I am just grieving. Sarah, he said, not looking at me. Grief makes us do crazy things. Let's just sleep on it. We can talk about the trust in the morning. I am sure there is a misunderstanding. Maybe the trust was revoked. We can look at it together. His voice was warm, reasonable. But I watched his hands as he picked up the sharp shards of glass. They weren't shaking anymore. They were steady. He was managing me. He was trying to de-escalate, to lull me into a false sense of security so I wouldn't run to the police or the title company tonight. He was buying time until Friday. Sure, Glenn, I said. We can talk in the morning. Good, he said. He stood up and smiled at me. It was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Good night, Sarah. Good night. I went upstairs and dragged the dresser in front of my door again. Then I wedged a chair under the handle. I sat on my bed. The folder from Northline Fiduciary clutched to my chest. He wasn't going to look at the trust in the morning. He was going to try to destroy it. Or me. I texted Jenna. I found the trust. He knows I know. He offered me money to leave. I refused. Her reply came instantly. Get out of the house. Now. I looked at the barricaded door. No, I typed back. If I leave, he wins. I'm staying, but I'm not sleeping. I waited for the morning, listening to the house, waiting for the sound of footsteps that never came. He was downstairs, plotting, and I was upstairs, armed with a stack of paper that was about to blow his world apart. The law moves slowly, Lydia Morse told me, her voice crisp and efficient over the speakerphone. But money moves fast. We were sitting in her office on Thursday morning. The day before the scheduled closing, I had barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the empty filing cabinet, the corrective deed, the way Glenn's eyes shifted when he lied. We filed the emergency petition to quiet title this morning, Lydia said, sliding a stamped copy across her desk toward me. It asks the court to freeze the property and declare the trust the rightful owner. It is a good document. It is solid. But, I asked, hearing the hesitation in her tone, but a judge might not look at it for 3 days, she said, or a week. The court docket is backed up. We are asking for an emergency injunction, but unless we get a hearing scheduled by tomorrow morning, which is unlikely, the closing could happen before the judge even reads the first page. I stared at the paperwork. It felt flimsy. It was just paper. Glenn had a buyer with cash. He had momentum. So if the judge doesn't stop it, I said, Glenn sells the house tomorrow. He takes the money, and the house belongs to Maple Row Homes, LLC. And once the deed is transferred to a third party, Lydia said, unwinding it becomes a nightmare. If Maple Row Homes claims they are a bona fide purchaser for value, meaning they didn't know about the fraud, the law protects them. You would be fighting to get the house back from a company that legally bought it, while Glenn disappears with the cash. So I have to stop the money, I said. You have to stop the confidence, Lydia corrected. A title company will not close if they think they are going to get sued. A lender will not wire funds if they think the collateral is risky. You need to be the risk. Sarah. She reached into her drawer and pulled out a thick packet. Take this, she said. It is the trust certification Elliot Vance sent over, plus a copy of our petition, and a formal letter from me stating that we are challenging the title. Do not email it. Do not mail it. Go there, I said. Go there, she agreed. Find the settlement agent. Look him in the eye. Make him understand that if he closes this deal, he is buying a lawsuit that will destroy his insurance premiums for the next decade. I took the packet. It felt heavier than the one I had carried yesterday. Who is the agent? She asked. Parker Reddick, I said. I saw his name on a tray. Then go find Parker Reddick, Lydia said, and do not let them turn you away. The receptionist at Keystone Title recognized me the moment I walked through the glass door. Her expression shifted from boredom to active annoyance. She reached for her headset, likely to call security or perhaps the police. I am not leaving, I said, placing the packet on the high counter with a flat slap that made her jump. Ms. Ward, she began, her voice tight. I told you yesterday, we cannot discuss client files with non-parties. I am not a non-party, I said, my voice rising just enough to carry to the cubicles behind her. I am the trustee of the property you are attempting to close on tomorrow. And if you proceed, your company will be named as a co-conspirator in a fraud investigation. The office went quiet. A phone rang in the distance, unanswered. I need to see Parker Reddick, I said. Now. He is in a closing, she said. Then pull him out, I said. Or I will go back there myself. She stared at me, weighing the threat. I wasn't a large woman. I wasn't intimidating physically, but I was wearing my mother's wool coat, and I was fueled by 3 days of adrenaline and rage. She must have seen something in my eyes that convinced her I was not bluffing. She typed a message on her computer. 2 minutes later, a side door opened. A man stepped out. He looked to be in his mid-30s, with thinning hair and a shirt that looked like it had been ironed in a hurry. He held a file folder against his chest like a shield. Ms. Ward? He asked. I'm Parker Reddick. We need to talk, I said. He led me into a small, windowless conference room. It smelled of stale popcorn and anxiety. We sat at a round table. I shouldn't be speaking to you, Parker said, shifting in his chair. The seller instructions are very specific. Mr. Marrow has directed us not to communicate with anyone regarding the estate. Mr. Marrow is lying to you, I said. I slid the packet across the table. Open it. Parker hesitated, then opened the envelope. He pulled out the certificate of trust. He saw the Northline fiduciary letterhead. He saw the date, July 10th. This is a trust certification, I said. My mother transferred the property into the Elena Ward Living Trust months before she died. She is the grantor and the trustee. I am the successor trustee. Parker looked at the document, then back at me. The color began to drain from his face, leaving him a sickly shade of beige. If this is valid, he murmured, then the corrective deed is a forgery, I finished. Or at best, a void instrument. Glenn Marrow had no authority to transfer the title to himself last week, because the title wasn't in my mother's individual name to give. Parker rubbed his forehead. I saw a sheen of sweat on his upper lip. I received the order from Hollis Dane, he said, almost to himself. The realtor. He sent it over as a rush. He said it was standard probate, surviving spouse. He said the corrective deed was just cleaning up the chain. Hollis Dane, I repeated. I memorized the name. Did he tell you why it was a rush? He said the buyer needed to close by Friday for tax purposes, Parker said. He insisted on urgency, unusual urgency. Who is the buyer? I asked. Parker shook his head. I can't. Mr. Reddick, I said. You are holding a grenade. I am the only one telling you not to pull the pin. Who is the buyer? He sighed, a long, deflating sound. He opened his own folder and glanced at a purchase agreement. Maple Row Homes, LLC, he said. Is that a person? A family? It's an investment group, he said. They buy distressed properties, cash deals. What is the purchase price? I asked. He hesitated again, then turned the paper so I could see the bottom line. $250,000. I felt a cold shock. My mother's house was in a historic district. Even in a bad market, it was worth $400,000. Zillow estimated it at $450,000. That is theft, I said. That is almost half the value. It's a liquidation price, Parker admitted. Common in fast cash deals. But why would a grieving husband sell his wife's legacy for half price 3 days after her funeral? I asked. Unless he needs the money immediately, and unless he knows he doesn't really own it. Parker looked at the trust document again. He looked at the corrective deed in his file. He looked sick. I need to call the underwriter, he said. If there is a competing chain of title, if this trust deed was recorded, we have a massive defect. We can't insure this. Will you stop the closing? I asked. I have to talk to the lender, he said. Maple Row is using hard money leverage. They are aggressive. If I delay this, they will scream. Let them scream, I said. Better them than a judge. I stood up. I will be checking the docket. Mr. Reddick, if a deed is recorded tomorrow, my lawyer will serve you on Monday. He didn't stand up. He just nodded, staring at the papers that had ruined his day. I sat in my car in the parking lot, shaking. I had done it. I had thrown the wrench in the gears, but I didn't feel safe yet. I called Elliot Vance. I saw the title agent, I said. He is spooked. He didn't know about the trust. That is impossible, Elliot said. Unless the title search was incompetent, we recorded a memorandum of trust. It puts the world on notice. Unless someone filed something after it that obscured it, I said. Or unless Hollis Dane, the realtor, provided his own abstract to save time. That happens, Elliot said. Dirty realtors controlling the flow of documents to the title company. It is a classic move. Parker said the buyer is Maple Row Homes, LLC, I said. And the price is $250,000. $250,000? Elliot sounded offended. That house is a jewel. That is a liquidation price. That is what I said. Sarah, Elliot said, his voice dropping. Listen to me. If he is selling it for that price, he isn't just greedy. He is in trouble. People don't leave $200,000 on the table unless they have a gun to their head, metaphorically or otherwise. You think he owes money? I think your mother was afraid of paperwork games, Elliot said. She told me she wanted redundancy because she didn't trust the mail. She didn't trust the files in the house. She was living with a man who made her feel like she needed a bunker. He's acting like he's the victim, I said. Like I'm the one ruining things. That is what narcissists do, Elliot said. But be careful. When you corner a rat, it doesn't surrender. It jumps. I needed to understand the mechanics of the lie. I went to the hospital billing office. It felt intrusive, using my status as next of kin to dig through the debris of my mother's death. But I had to know how far Glenn's deception went. The billing clerk was kind, a woman named Janice with kind eyes. She pulled up the records on a dual-monitor setup. I just want to verify the billing address, I said. I think there might have been a mix-up with the mail. Let's see, Janice said. The guarantor is listed as Glenn Marrow. Address is P.O. Box 404, Briar Glen. The P.O. Box, I said. Did he give a home address? No, she said. Just the box and a cell phone number. Can I see the intake form? I asked. The one he signed? She clicked a few keys and turned the monitor. There it was, the digital capture of the admission paperwork. Relationship to patient, spouse, guarantor signature, Glenn Marrow. The signature was jerky, jagged. It looked like the hand of a man who was trembling, but it was the date that caught me. November 14th, the day she was admitted, the day he opened the P.O. box. He hadn't just reacted to her death. He had been preparing for it the moment she got sick. He had directed the hospital bills, the insurance notices, the inevitable statements of patient deceased to a box where I would never see them. He wanted to control the narrative of her death just as he wanted to control the asset of her life. Is there anything else? Janice asked. One thing, I said. My mother's personal effects, the list of what she had when she arrived. Oh, that would be in the nursing notes, Janice said. She clicked again. Here. Patient valuables, clothing, shoes, eyeglasses, no jewelry. No jewelry? I asked. It says wedding ring, none, watch, none. I thanked her and walked out into the cold air. My mother never took off her wedding ring. Not for showers, not for sleep. It was a part of her hand, if she wasn't wearing it when she arrived at the hospital. She had taken it off at home. I drove back to the house. The sky was turning a bruised purple. The early winter sunset closing in like a lid on a jar. Glenn wasn't home. His car was gone. I went straight to the closet. I pulled the towels out, opened the false panel, and took out the metal box. I hadn't looked thoroughly the first time. I had just grabbed the papers. I dumped the contents onto the hallway rug. There was the envelope I had already found. There were some old photos of me as a baby, and there was a small, velvet drawstring pouch, royal blue. I picked it up. It clinked softly. I loosened the strings and tipped it into my palm. A gold band, a diamond solitaire, my mother's rings. I stared at them, the metal cold against my skin. She had taken them off. She hadn't just hidden the deed. She had hidden the marriage. She had removed the symbol of her bond with Glenn and locked it away in a box he didn't know existed. It was a rejection, a silent, private divorce. She knew she was dying, or she feared she might, and she didn't want to die wearing his ring. She didn't want to be claimed by him. I felt a sob rise in my throat, hot and sharp, the loneliness of it. She had done this alone, in this hallway, while he was probably downstairs watching TV or plotting his theft. She had stripped herself of him and hidden the evidence. I slipped the ring onto my right hand. It was a little loose, but it fit. I wasn't just fighting for a house anymore. I was fighting for her freedom. I put everything back and closed the panel. As I stood up, I heard the garage door rumble. He was home. I walked down the stairs, my hand in my pocket, clutching the ring. He met me in the driveway as I was walking out to my car. I didn't want to be trapped inside with him. "You went to the title company," he said. It wasn't a question. He was standing by the bumper of his sedan, his coat unbuttoned, his face flushed. "I did," I said. "Parker Reddick called you?" "Hollis called me," Glenn said. He took a step toward me. "Hollis said you came in there screaming about fraud, making a scene." "I didn't scream," I said calmly. "I just provided documentation." "You are ruining this," Glenn said. His voice was trembling, but not with sadness, with rage. "You are destroying the last thing your mother built. She wanted this house sold. She told me." She said, "Glenn, if anything happens to me, sell the house. Don't let it be a burden." "Liar," I said. "How dare you?" he hissed. "You weren't here. Sarah, you were in New York. I was the one changing the sheets. I was the one driving her to appointments. You have no right to come here and dictate what happens." "I found the ring." "Glenn," I said. He stopped. He blinked, confused. "What?" "Her wedding ring," I said. "It wasn't on her finger when she died. The hospital records say no jewelry. You know why?" He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing. "Because she took it off," I said. "She took it off and she hid it, because she didn't want to be your wife anymore." "That's crazy," he said. "She lost it. She was sick. Her hands were swelling." "She hid it in the lockbox," I said. "The one you couldn't find." His face twisted. The mask of the grieving widower dissolved, revealing something ugly and terrified underneath. "Give it to me," he said. "No. The house is sold," he shouted. He slammed his hand on the hood of his car. "It is a done deal. You can't stop it." "Parker Reddick seems to think I can," I said. "He's calling the underwriter." "I promised them," Glenn yelled. The words ripped out of him. "I already promised them Friday." The silence that followed was sudden and absolute. "Promised who?" I asked quietly. "Who did you promise, Glenn?" He looked at me, his eyes wide, realizing what he had said. He looked like a man who had just stepped off a ledge and realized there was no net. "The buyers," he muttered. The LLC." "You don't promise a buyer a date unless you owe them something," I said. "Or unless the money is already spent." He backed away. He looked at the house, then at me. "You don't know what you're doing," he whispered. "If that money doesn't clear tomorrow, you have no idea." "Then tell me," I said. "Tell me the truth." He shook his head. "Just stop it. Sarah, call Parker. Tell him it was a mistake. Take the 20,000. Take 30. Just let it close." "No," I said. He looked at me with a mix of hatred and pity. "Then you'll lose anyway," he said. "And you'll take me down with you." He walked past me into the house. He didn't slam the door. He closed it softly, which was somehow more terrifying. I called Lydia from the car. "He cracked," I said. "He told me he promised them Friday. He's terrified." "That confirms it," Lydia said. "This isn't a normal sale. This is a payoff. He is in debt to someone, and the house is the only way out." "Did Parker stop it?" I asked. "I spoke to Parker's assistant," Lydia said. "The underwriter is reviewing the file, but they haven't issued a formal cancellation. The lender, this hard money group backing Maple Row, is pushing back. They are claiming your trust documents are unverified copies and that the corrective deed takes precedence until a judge says otherwise." "So they might still close?" "If Glenn goes in there tomorrow and signs an affidavit saying the trust was revoked, yes, a hungry title agent might take the risk." "And if it closes?" "If it closes," Lydia said, her voice grim, "the funds are wired instantly. Glenn gets the cash. He pays off whoever he promised, and the LLC takes the title. To get it back, we would have to sue the LLC, prove they weren't bona fide purchasers, and litigate for 2 years. Meanwhile, the house sits empty or gets flipped again." "So I have to stop it in the room," I said. "Yes," Lydia said. "If the underwriter hasn't killed it by morning, your only chance is to be physically present at the closing, to put your body between the pen and the paper. I'll be there. I said. Sarah, Lydia warned, if he is in debt to the kind of people who demand a promised Friday, he is not safe. Do not go alone if you can help it. I don't have anyone else, I said. Jenna is in Jersey. You have court. Then bring the ghost, Lydia said. Bring your mother's paperwork. Bring the ring. Make it impossible for them to ignore her. I hung up. I looked at the house, my childhood home. It looked dark, except for one light in the kitchen where Glenn was likely pouring another drink. He thought he could erase her. He thought he could sell her life to pay his debts. I touched the ring on my finger. Not today. Glenn, I whispered. And definitely not tomorrow. I started the engine and drove to a motel. I wasn't sleeping under that roof tonight. I needed to be ready. I needed to be sharp. Tomorrow was Friday, the day he promised them. But it was also the day I was going to take it all back. The motel room smelled of industrial lemon cleaner and stale cigarette smoke, a scent that seemed to cling to the cheap polyester bedspread. I had checked in under a fake name, Sarah Smith, because I didn't want Glenn to know where I was sleeping. I didn't want him to know I was sleeping at all. I pushed the 2 twin beds apart to make room on the floor. This was my war room. I had spent the last 3 days reacting, running from the funeral to the lawyer, from the county office to the title company. Tonight, I stopped running. Tonight, I built my case. My mother had been a woman of lists. She organized her life in columns and rows, finding comfort in the order of things. If I was going to stop this sale, I had to stop being the grieving, emotional daughter and start being Elena Ward's executor. I had to speak the language of the people who were trying to steal her house. Paper, dates, and liability. I opened my laptop and created a blank document. I didn't write a narrative. I didn't write a sob story about how much I loved the house. I made a timeline. I stripped the emotion out of it until only the facts remained. July 10th, 2025. Elena Ward creates the Elena Ward Revocable Living Trust. July 10th, 2025. Elena Ward executes a deed transferring 412 Elm Street into the trust. November 14th, 2025. Elena Ward is admitted to the hospital. November 14th, 2025. Glenn Marrow opens a post office box and redirects all mail. January 18th, 2026. Elena Ward dies. January 21st, 2026. A corrective deed is recorded, purporting to fix a 1990 deed, signed by a mobile notary with no logbook. I looked at the screen. When you laid it out like that, it didn't look like a messy family dispute. It looked like a heist. I printed it out on the portable printer I had bought at an office supply store an hour ago. I printed 10 copies. Then I organized the exhibits. Exhibit A, the trust certification. Exhibit B, the corrective deed with the suspicious signature. Exhibit C, the hospital admission form showing the date of the mail diversion. I was building a wall of paper. And tomorrow morning, at 10 o'clock, I was going to drop it right in the middle of their closing table. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was Jenna. I found him, she said. Her voice was tinny over the speaker. Hollis Dane, the realtor. What did you find? I asked, stapling a stack of papers. He is not just a realtor, Sarah. He is a fix-it man for distressed properties, and he has a record. I stopped stapling. Criminal? Administrative, Jenna said. I pulled his license history. He was disciplined in Ohio 4 years ago before he moved to Pennsylvania. Failure to disclose material facts. He was helping investors flip houses without revealing structural defects or title issues. He got a slap on the wrist and a fine. But he surrendered his license there and moved states. So this is his playbook, I said. He finds a desperate seller, rushes the paperwork, and buries the problems. Exactly, Jenna said. And the buyer? Maple Row Homes, LLC? I did a deep dive on their registered agent. It links back to a holding company that Hollis Dane used to work with in Ohio. This isn't a random buyer. Sarah, Glenn didn't find a buyer. Hollis brought his own people to the table to strip the asset. They are eating the equity, I said. They buy it for $250,000, half its value. And Glenn walks away with a quick payout, and they flip it for $400 next month. And Glenn is the patsy, Jenna said. He is the grieving husband who just wants to move on. It is the perfect cover. Who questions a widower in a hurry? I do, I said. You need to bring this up, Jenna said. If the title company knows the realtor has a history of fraud, they will panic. I added it to the file, I said. Thanks, Jenna. Sarah, she said, her voice softening. Are you okay? No, I said. I am furious. Good, she said. Fury is fuel. Get some sleep. I didn't sleep. I packed my trial bags, tote bags filled with the packets I had assembled. One for the title agent, one for the lender, one for Glenn, one for the police. The next morning, the sky was a hard, brilliant blue. It was Friday, closing day. I had one stop to make before the title company. I went to Northline Fiduciary. Elliot Vance was waiting for me in the lobby. He held a heavy, cream-colored envelope. This is the affidavit, he said. We walked into a small notary room off the lobby. Elliot raised his right hand and swore to the truth of the document before a colleague stamped it. This states, Elliot explained as he handed it to me, that I, Elliot Vance, personally witnessed the execution of the trust and the deed into trust on July 10th. It attaches the payment record showing your mother paid for the recording. It confirms that you are the sole successor trustee. It effectively calls Glenn's deed a fabrication without using the word lie. It is beautiful, I said. It is a stop sign, Elliot said. Title insurers are risk-averse. They are in the business of collecting premiums, not paying claims. If you show them this, you are showing them a 100% chance of a claim. Thank you, Elliot, I said. One more thing, he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small flash drive. I pulled the metadata from the digital file of the deed we prepared. It shows the creation date and the edit history. If they try to say our deed was created later, this proves it wasn't. I took the drive. It felt light, but it carried the weight of truth. Go get him, Elliot said. My next stop was the police station. Lydia had called ahead to a contact she had in the financial crimes unit. A Detective Miller. The station was busy, a hive of uniformed officers and ringing phones. I waited on a wooden bench for 20 minutes until a man in plainclothes came out. He looked tired, with bags under his eyes and a coffee stain on his tie. Ms. Ward? He asked. Lydia said you have a situation. I have a forgery, I said, and a fraudulent sale happening in 2 hours. We went to his desk. I laid out the corrective deed and the sample of my mother's real signature. I showed him the timeline. He looked at it, rubbing his chin. This is a civil matter. Mostly, he said. Probate disputes, estate fights, we usually tell people to get a lawyer. I have a lawyer, I said. But a lawyer can't arrest someone for forging a public record. That is a crime. Detective, uttering a forged instrument. Isn't that the statute? He looked at me sharply. You've done your homework. My mother is dead, I said. I don't have time to be ignorant. He picked up the corrective deed. He looked at the notary stamp. Sable and Wren. I know this notary, he muttered. We've had complaints about them before. Signatures for hire. If this deed is fake, I said, then the sale today is theft, grand larceny. $250,000. Detective Miller sighed. He leaned back in his chair. I can't stop the closing, Ms. Ward. I can't barge in there and arrest him based on your suspicion and a wonky signature. I need a handwriting analysis. I need a statement from the notary. That takes weeks. I don't need you to arrest him today, I said. I just need you to tell me that I am right, that this is a police matter. He looked me in the eye. A forged recording is a criminal problem, not just a family one, he said. If you can prove he signed her name, or had someone else do it, he is looking at 5 to 10 years. And anyone who helped him is looking at conspiracy. Can I quote you? I asked. You can tell them you spoke to Detective Miller in financial crimes, he said. And you can tell them that I have opened a file to preserve the documents. Thank you, I said. Be careful. Ms. Ward, he said as I stood up. Family money makes people crazy. I've seen brothers stab each other over a used Honda. A house? That's dangerous territory. I got back in my car. My phone buzzed. A text from Glenn. I stared at the screen. It was the first time he had texted me since the eviction notice. Take the money. You'll lose anyway. I read it twice. He didn't say. I am legally right. He didn't say. The house is mine, he said. You'll lose. It was a threat disguised as advice. It was the text of a man who knew he was gambling and wanted his opponent to fold before the cards were shown. And take the money. He was still pushing the settlement. If his deal was solid, he wouldn't care about settling with me. He would just sell the house and let me sue him later. The fact that he was still offering cash meant he needed my silence before the ink dried. I didn't reply. I needed to go back to the house. I needed to change clothes. I couldn't walk into a closing wearing jeans and a sweater. I needed to look like the owner. I drove to Elm Street. The sold sign hadn't been put up yet, but the coming soon sign was gone. Glenn's car was in the driveway. I pulled in behind him, blocking him in. A small, petty act of dominance. I walked into the house. It was quiet. Too quiet. Glenn? I called out. No answer. I walked up the stairs. The door to the hallway closet was open. My heart stuttered. I ran to the closet. The towels were on the floor. A heap of terry cloth. The vacuum cleaner was tipped over, and the false panel, the cedar wood at the back, had been ripped out. Splintered wood hung from the frame. The space behind it was empty. The lockbox was gone. He had found it. I stood there, staring at the hole in the wall. He must have torn the house apart looking for it. He must have realized, after our conversation yesterday, that I had physical proof. He had found the box. He had probably forced it open. He had seen the trust. He had seen the ring. And he had taken it. I felt a wave of nausea. Not because the proof was gone. I had the documents in my bag, and the ring was on my finger, but because of the violence of it, the shattered wood, the invasion. He had violated my mother's last secret space. Looking for this? I spun around. Glenn was standing in the doorway of the guest room. He was holding a crowbar. My breath caught in my throat. He wasn't holding it like a weapon. Exactly. He was holding it loosely at his side. But it was a crowbar. You tore the closet apart, I said. My voice was steady, though my knees felt like water. It's my closet, he said. I can do what I want with it. He walked into the hallway. He looked different today. He was wearing his best suit, a navy blue one my mother had bought him. His hair was gelled. He looked polished, but his eyes were manic. You found the box, I said. I found a box of trash, he said. Old papers, meaningless scribbles. You found the trust, I said. You know she left it to me. He laughed. It wasn't his laugh. It was a theatrical, forced sound. It was always my house, he said. We were married. Everything she had was mine. That paper? That was just her being confused. The lawyer told me. He said it doesn't hold up. What lawyer? I asked. Hollis Dane isn't a lawyer. Glenn, he's a crook with a suspended license. Glenn's smile faltered. You don't know who you are talking about. I know exactly who I'm talking about, I said. I know Hollis is coaching you. I know he told you to say, it was always my house. I know he told you to destroy the box. Glenn took a step toward me. He dropped the crowbar on the carpet with a heavy thud. It doesn't matter, he said, because the box is gone. The papers are gone. I burned them. Sarah, in the fireplace. Just now. He pointed toward the stairs. So go ahead, he said. Go to the closing. Wave your hands. You have nothing. Just copies. I have the deed. I have the possession. And in 2 hours, I have the money. He was trying to gaslight me. He thought that by destroying the originals, he destroyed the truth. He didn't understand how the law worked. He didn't understand that a recorded document didn't need to be in a metal box to be real. "You burned the trust?" I asked quietly. "Ashes," he said. "Just like her. The cruelty of it took my breath away." "You are a small, sad man," I said, "and you are going to prison." "Get out," he said. "Get out of my house before I call the police." "I'm leaving," I said. "I have an appointment at Keystone Title." I walked past him. I didn't run. I forced myself to walk slowly, down the stairs, past the fireplace where a pile of ash indeed smoldered behind the screen. I didn't stop to check what he had burned. It didn't matter. I had Elliot's affidavit. I had the digital metadata. I walked out the front door and got into my car. My hands were shaking so hard, I couldn't put the key in the ignition. I sat there for a minute, breathing in and out. 1, 2, 3. He was desperate. The crowbar. The burning. He was terrified. I picked up my phone and dialed Parker Reddick. "Keystone Title, Parker speaking." He sounded breathless. "This is Sarah Ward," I said. "Ms. Ward, please," he said. "I can't. I am coming to the closing." "Parker," I said, "and I am bringing counsel." It was a bluff. Lydia wasn't coming, but he didn't know that. "Ms. Ward, I highly advise against causing a disturbance," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I'm not coming to cause a disturbance," I said. "I am coming to prevent a felony. And Parker, I just left the house. Glenn Marrow just confessed to burning estate documents in the fireplace. He is unstable. And I know your lender is asking questions." There was a silence on the line. Then, a crack in the dam. "The lender demanded a second title search this morning," Parker admitted. His voice dropped to a whisper. "They saw the gap in the recording dates. They are asking about the corrective deed." "Good," I said. "Tell them to keep asking. I'll be there in an hour with the answers." I hung up. The deal was wobbling. I just had to push it over. I drove to a parking lot down the street to change. I couldn't go back into the motel, and I couldn't change in the house. I put on my black suit in the back seat of my car, struggling with the zipper, feeling ridiculous and tragic. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. My eyes were red-rimmed, but my jaw was set. I put on a layer of foundation to hide the sleeplessness. I put on lipstick. I looked like my mother. I called Lydia. "I'm ready," I said, "but you're not here." "I am with you in spirit," Lydia said. "And on the phone if you need me. Do you have the script?" "I have it memorized," I said. "Repeat it to me," she commanded. I took a breath. "I am not here to argue emotions," I recited. "I am here to assert an adverse claim to the title of 412 Elm Street. I am the successor trustee of the Elena Ward Living Trust, which holds the superior title. Any transfer of this property by Glenn Marrow is void ab initio, and any title insurance policy issued today will be subject to an immediate claim for fraud." "Good," Lydia said. "Do not get drawn into a screaming match with Glenn. Do not let the realtor bully you. Address the settlement agent. Address the money. The settlement agent is the gatekeeper. If he gets scared, the gate stays closed." "What if Glenn lies?" I asked. "What if he says the trust was revoked?" "Ask for the revocation," Lydia said. "Ask for the document. If he says he burned it, say, 'Then you have destroyed the evidence of your own authority. Turn every lie back on him.'" "Okay," I said. "And Sarah?" "Yes?" "When you walk in there, don't sit down," Lydia said. "Stand, occupy the space, make them look up to you." "I will," I said. I arrived at Keystone Title 10 minutes early. I sat in my car, watching the entrance. I saw Glenn arrive. He parked his car and got out. Smoothing his suit jacket, he looked nervous. He checked his reflection in the window. A moment later, another car pulled up, a sleek black luxury sedan. A man got out. He was tall, with slicked-back silver hair and a tan that looked like it came from a bottle. He wore a suit that cost more than my car. Hollis Dane, the realtor, the fixer. He walked over to Glenn. He put a hand on Glenn's shoulder, squeezing it firmly. He leaned in and said something. Glenn nodded, looking like a scolded child. Then, a third car, a nondescript gray sedan. A woman got out, carrying a briefcase, the buyer's representative, Maple Row Homes. They all walked in together, the cast of the play. I waited 2 minutes. I looked at the ring on my finger. I touched the files in my bag. "Okay, Mom," I whispered. "Let's go to the closing." I got out of the car. The wind was cold, but I didn't feel it. I felt a strange, cold clarity. I walked through the glass doors. The receptionist looked up and her eyes went wide. She reached for the phone, but I was already past her. I walked down the hallway toward the conference room. I could hear voices, laughter, the sound of people who thought they had won. I stopped at the door. I took a deep breath. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The laughter stopped. Glenn was at the head of the table. Hollis was to his right. Parker Reddick was at the computer. The buyer's rep was across from them. They all looked at me. I didn't look at Glenn. I looked at Parker Reddick. "I believe," I said, my voice filling the room, "that you are missing a few documents." I dropped my heavy tote bag onto the mahogany table. The sound was like a gavel coming down. I didn't sit. I stood at the end of the table, blocking the door. I was ready. The conference room at Keystone Title and Settlement was designed to make people feel safe. It had plush beige carpeting, mahogany veneer tables, and abstract art on the walls that looked like soothing waves of nothing. But when I stepped inside, the air was thick with a very different kind of energy. It smelled of coffee, expensive cologne, and greed. Glenn was sitting at the head of the table. He was laughing. It was a sound I had not heard in years, a genuine, belly-deep chuckle. He was leaning back in his leather chair, holding a pen in one hand, looking for all the world like a man who had just won the lottery. Beside him sat Hollis Dane, the realtor. I recognized him from the license photos Jenna had sent me. He was slicker in person, with silver hair combed back tight, and a suit that shimmered slightly under the fluorescent lights. He was patting Glenn on the shoulder, a gesture of ownership. Across from them sat a woman I didn't know. She was sharp-featured, wearing a gray blazer, with a laptop open and a file folder already tabbed with color-coded sticky notes. This was the buyer's representative. She looked bored. She looked efficient. She looked like she bought houses like this before breakfast. Parker Reddick sat at the computer console, looking like a man who wanted to be anywhere else. The laughter died the moment I dropped my tote bag onto the table. The heavy thud echoed in the room. "Sarah," Glenn said. His smile didn't vanish. It just froze, turning into a rictus of confused annoyance. "What are you doing here?" "I am here for the closing," I said. My voice was steady. It surprised me. I sounded like my mother when she was returning a defective appliance, calm, firm, and armed with the receipt. "This is a private meeting," Hollis Dane said. His voice was smooth, like oiled gravel. He didn't stand up. He just looked at me with the weary condescension of a professional dealing with an amateur. "Ms. Ward, I assume? Glenn told us you were having a hard time. We are just finishing up here." "You aren't finishing," I said. "You haven't even started." I walked to the end of the table. I didn't sit down. I wanted to loom. I wanted them to have to crane their necks to look at me. "Parker," I said, turning my eyes to the settlement agent, "have you issued the title policy yet?" Parker looked at Hollis, then at Glenn, then at me. He looked pale. "We were just reviewing the final affidavits," Parker mumbled. "Good," I said, "because if you issue that policy, you are ensuring a theft." Glenn stood up then. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. "That is enough," he snapped. "Sarah, you are embarrassing yourself. You are upset. I get it. But this is business." "Sit down." "Glenn," I said. "I will not sit down," he shouted. "This is my house. I am the seller, and you are trespassing." "Is he the seller?" I asked the room at large. I looked at the buyer's representative. She had stopped typing. She was watching us with eyes that were cold and calculating. She didn't care about the family drama. She cared about the asset. Parker, I said. Ask him the question. The one on the affidavit of title. Ask him to confirm he has the sole authority to convey this property. Parker cleared his throat. He looked at the paper in front of him. Mr. Marrow, Parker said, his voice cracking slightly. Do you affirm that you are the sole owner of the property at 412 Elm Street, and that there are no other unrecorded interests, trusts, or claims against the title? Glenn looked at me. His eyes were wide, manic. Yes, he said. I affirm it. Liar, I said. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the packet I had prepared in the motel room. Exhibit A, Exhibit B, the timeline, the notarized statement from Elliot Vance. I slid the stack of papers down the center of the long table. It hissed against the wood and came to a stop right in front of the buyer's representative. She picked it up immediately. What is this? Hollis demanded. Reaching for the papers, the woman slapped his hand away. Let me read it. It is a certificate of trust, I said, my voice filling the room. Dated July 10th, 2025. My mother transferred the property into the Elena Ward Living Trust 6 months before she died. She is the grantor. I am the successor trustee. Glenn Marrow is not on the deed. He is not a beneficiary. He is a tenant who is attempting to sell a landlord's property. Glenn laughed again. It was a high, jagged sound. That is fake, he said. She wrote that on a napkin. It was never filed. Turn the page, I said to the woman. She turned the page. That is a notarized affidavit from Elliot Vance, the senior fiduciary at Northline. I said, attaching the electronic recording receipt. The deed into the trust was recorded on July 11th. It is in the public record. The room shifted. You could feel it physically. The air pressure dropped. The atmosphere went from annoying family drama to legal risk. The buyer's representative looked up from the papers. She looked at Glenn. Her expression was no longer bored. It was hostile. You told us the title was clean, she said. It is clean, Glenn insisted. We filed a corrective deed. Last week. It fixed the error from 30 years ago. It supersedes all that trust garbage. The corrective deed, I said. I pulled out the second document, the blown-up image of the signature. Parker, I said, look at the date on the corrective deed. Look at the notary stamp. Sable and Wren. Parker looked at his file. Yes, it was notarized remotely. I want the log, I said. Parker blinked. Excuse me? The notary log, I said. If that deed is valid, there is a video recording of my mother signing it, or at least a journal entry. But there isn't one, is there? Because Sable and Wren doesn't keep logs, and my mother didn't sign it. She did, Glenn shouted. She signed it right at the kitchen table. Then produce the log, I said. Call the notary, right now. Put him on speaker. Glenn's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at Hollis. Hollis stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He was trying to regain control of the room. This is highly irregular, Hollis said smoothly. Ms. Ward is clearly confused. She is grieving. She is estranged from her stepfather. This trust document she has produced is likely an unverified copy. The recorded deed, the one Mr. Marrow filed, is the controlling instrument. We have title insurance ready to bind. Let's not let emotions derail a transaction that is already funded. He looked at Parker. He was using his height, his voice, his presence to bully the settlement agent. Bind the policy. Parker, Hollis said. We close? Parker looked at Hollis. Then he looked at me. Then he looked at the packet on the table. I can't, Parker whispered. What? Hollis snapped. I can't bind, Parker said, louder this time. He pushed his chair back. Not with a competing instrument on the table, not with an allegation of forgery. Parker picked up the phone on the console. I am calling the underwriter, he announced. We are pausing the signing. You can't pause it, Glenn screamed. I promised them. The buyer's representative slammed the folder shut. You promised us a clean close by noon, she said. Her voice was ice. We have funds sitting in escrow. We have a crew scheduled for demo on Monday. Demo? I asked. I looked at her. You aren't moving in, I said. We are Maple Row Homes, she said, as if that explained everything. We don't live in houses. We redevelop them. And who is the end buyer? I asked. She hesitated, then shrugged. The deal was crumbling anyway. She had nothing to lose by telling the truth. We have a same-day assignment, she said. We are assigning the contract to a rental conglomerate at 4 o'clock today for $380,000. I felt the blood rush to my face. They were buying it for $250,000. They were selling it 4 hours later for $380,000. They were stripping $130,000 of equity out of my mother's legacy in a single afternoon, and Glenn was letting them do it just to get his quick payout. You are vultures, I said. We are business people, she said. Your stepfather is the one who set the price. He wanted speed. He said he needed the cash by the weekend to settle a debt. I don't have a debt, Glenn yelled. He was sweating now, rivulets running down his temples. I just wanted to be done with it. I wanted to move on. You wanted to erase her, I said. She is dead, Glenn roared. He slammed his fist on the table. She is dead, Sarah, and I am alive. I am the one who has to live with the bills. I am the one who has to live in that house with her ghost. So you forged her name? I asked quietly. I did what I had to do, he screamed. She wasn't thinking straight. That trust? She did that behind my back. She betrayed me. She protected herself, I said. It's not fair. Glenn looked like a child now, a petulant, dangerous child. I took care of her. I deserve that house. It is my compensation. Compensation? I asked. For what? For being a husband? For putting up with her, Glenn shouted. For the sickness, for the doctors, for the way she looked at me like I was nothing. He was unraveling. The polished widower was gone. This was the real Glenn, the man who counted the cost of his wife's existence and decided he was owed a refund. You didn't sign that deed, did you, Glenn? I asked. The corrective one. The signature is too steady. You were shaking too much. Who signed it? Did Hollis do it? Hollis Dane stiffened. Watch your mouth, young lady. I didn't even sign that part, Glenn blurted out. The silence that followed was absolute. Glenn froze. He realized what he had said. He stammered. I didn't handle the filing, the administrative part. You said, I didn't even sign that part, I repeated. Which implies there are parts you did sign, and parts someone else signed for you, like my mother's name. Parker Reddick was typing furiously into the file notes. He was documenting every word. The phone on the console beeped. Parker put it on speaker. Underwriting, a voice said. This is Parker at Briar Glen Branch. I have file 409. We have a title dispute. A successor trustee has appeared with a prior recorded deed and an allegation of fraud regarding the seller's vesting instrument. Stop the close, the underwriter said instantly. The voice was bored, but absolute. Do not disperse funds. Do not record. Flag the file for legal review. Cancel the policy. Understood, Parker said. He hung up. He looked at Glenn. The closing is terminated, Parker said. Mr. Marrow, we cannot proceed. Please return the signing pen. Glenn stood there, his chest heaving. He looked at the pen in his hand as if it were a weapon he didn't know how to use. You can't do this, he whispered. The money, it's already wired. And it will be wired back, the buyer's rep said. She stood up and picked up her laptop. Maple Row is out. We don't buy litigation. Hollis, you promised this was clean. Don't bring us another deal until you learn how to vet your sellers. She walked out without looking back. Hollis Dane stood up. He buttoned his jacket with an angry jerk. You made a mistake, Glenn, Hollis hissed. You lost your cool. Fix it, Glenn pleaded. He grabbed Hollis's arm. Hollis, you said you could fix it. You said the paperwork would hold. Hollis shook him off. I said I could sell a house. I didn't say I could perform miracles for an idiot who confesses in front of a witness. Hollis stormed past me. He glared at me as he passed. You think you won? You just turned a liquid asset into a concrete block. Nobody wins now. My mother wins, I said. Hollis slammed the door. It was just me, Glenn, and Parker. Glenn sank back into his chair. He put his head in his hands. You ruined it, he moaned. You ruined everything. I saved it, I said. The door opened again. Glenn's head snapped up. He looked hopeful, as if he expected Hollis to return with a new plan. It wasn't Hollis. 2 police officers walked in. They were uniformed, wearing thick winter jackets. They looked like they had been pulled off patrol, smelling of cold air and radio static. Glenn Marrow? The older officer asked. Glenn went white. What? Why are you here? We received a request for a welfare check and document preservation, the officer said. From Detective Miller, Financial Crimes. He understands there is a dispute regarding a forged instrument? Glenn stood up. He backed away toward the window. I didn't do anything, he said. It's a civil matter. My lawyer said it's civil. We aren't arresting you, sir, the officer said. Not yet, but we are taking a report, and we are collecting the documents on this table as evidence. The officer reached for the packet I had laid down. He also reached for the folder Parker was holding. I need that file, the officer said to Parker. He handed it over like it was radioactive. Glenn stared at the officers. The reality of it was finally hitting him. This wasn't a family squabble anymore. This wasn't a clever real estate trick. This was men with badges and guns asking for the paperwork he had lied about. Glenn grabbed his phone from the table. I have to make a call, he stammered. I have a right to make a call. He pushed past the officers. He practically ran into the hallway. I followed him to the doorway. Glenn was pacing in the corridor. The phone pressed to his ear. His back was to me. Pick up, he hissed. Pick up. Damn it. Then he stopped. Someone had answered. They are here, Glenn whispered. His voice was trembling with terror. The police. You said this wouldn't happen. You said it was a clean sweep. He listened for a moment. No, I didn't, he cried. I didn't say anything. She found the trust. She found the ring. He listened again. He went very still. Don't hang up, he pleaded. Don't hang up on me. What do I do? What about the money? He pulled the phone away from his ear. He stared at the screen. The call had ended. Glenn stood there in the hallway of the title company, holding a dead phone, realizing he was entirely alone. He turned and saw me. His eyes were hollow. There was no anger left in them, only a vast, terrifying emptiness. Are you happy? He asked. You got the house. I got the truth, I said. The house is worthless now, he said. You'll see. It's not an asset. Sarah, it's a tomb. He walked toward the exit. The officers watched him go but didn't stop him. They had what they needed, the file. I walked back into the conference room. Parker was sitting in his chair, slumped over. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I said. I picked up my empty tote bag. I felt lightheaded. Maybe. I walked out of the building. The winter air hit me like a physical blow, sharp and cleansing. The sun was high and bright, reflecting off the snow piles in the parking lot. I saw Glenn's car peeling out of the lot. He drove over the curb in his haste, the undercarriage scraping with a horrible metal shriek. He didn't stop. He merged into traffic and disappeared. I stood by my car, shaking. The adrenaline was draining out of me, leaving behind a deep, aching exhaustion. I had done it. I had stopped the closing. I had saved the house. But as I watched the traffic flow by, I thought about Glenn's phone call. You said this wouldn't happen. He hadn't been talking to Hollis. Hollis was in the room when the police arrived. He was talking to someone else, someone he owed, someone who had promised him a clean sweep. My phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down. It was a text from an unknown number. No area code. just a string of digits that looked like a burner route. I opened the message. You don't know what you just interrupted. I looked around the parking lot. It was empty, save for a few cars, but I felt eyes on me. I shivered, pulling my mother's coat tighter around my shoulders. The sale was stopped, but the story wasn't over. Glenn was just the middleman, and whoever was behind him, whoever needed that money on a Friday, wasn't happy. I got into my car and locked the doors. I touched the ring on my finger. Okay, Mom, I whispered. What do we do now? I started the engine and drove away, leaving the title company behind, driving toward a house that was finally legally mine, but felt less like a home and more like a fortress I would have to defend. Thank you so much for listening to Get Out. I sold the house. Stepdad evicted me to sell my dead mom's estate. I went to the closing. This was a story about grief, betrayal, and the lengths we go to protect the people we love, even after they are gone. I hope Sarah's fight resonated with you. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Are you tuning in from the UK, the US, Australia, or somewhere else entirely? Please leave a comment below with your location. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this series, please make sure to subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel so you don't miss the next drama. And please, share your thoughts in English in the comments section. Did Glenn get what he deserved? Who do you think sent that final text? I can't wait to read your theories. Until next time, stay safe and check your paperwork.